Today we're making a giant Oreo Swiss roll or a Yule log, whatever you want to call it. But first, we want to let you guys know that we have been welcomed into the YouTube partnership program and we have accepted. So, as of a couple days ago, we are officially partnered with YouTube on this channel. Welcome back to Cooking with Kayla D. I'm Kayla, and this is my husband, Randy. My disclaimer. If you haven't done so, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get all the up-to-date episodes as they release. Your ingredients you're going to need: 12 mega stuffed Oreos, 1 box of chocolate cake mix, 1/4 to 1/2 cup of milk, 1 container of whipped white frosting, 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream, 12 ounces of chocolate chips of your choice, and 2 teaspoons of coconut oil. Now let's jump right in. You're going to get your Oreos. We went with the mega stuff so we could have more of the center frosting for our filling. You're going to go ahead and separate the cookie from the filling. And like I said, you'll want to use about 12 of these, a dozen, which is just 2 rows. Now if you're going to go with a regular Oreo or even a double stuffed, then you will want to use several more. You want to be able to get at least about 1/2 cup of the filling and about 1/2 cup of the cookies to 1 cup of the cookies. So you want to continue to go ahead and separate these, and the reason we're doing this is because we're going to grind up those cookies and we're going to put them into our cake mix when we mix our cake mix for baking so that it gives the cake an Oreo taste. Then with the frosting, we're going to melt it down and we're going to blend it right into our container of frosting so that we can make our frosting taste like the center of the Oreo, but a little bit lighter and fluffier. Continue separating your cookies, and as you can see, I'm done, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap these back up. Now I've got me a little mini food processor here that I got from Costco a couple years back. And go ahead and put your cookie halves in there. And after you get them in there, you can go ahead and blend those up. You do not need to add butter or milk or anything to this. You just put your cookies in and blend them up. You can do it in a food processor or in a blender. Some people even do it in them little shake mixers. Whatever you have and what you use is fine. After you have that blended up, you want to go ahead and set that aside until we get ready to mix our cake. Now, for your cake, you're going to mix it the same way that the box says to do it on the back. So whatever that box says, that's how you're going to do it. So I just chose this chocolate cake mix because it was $1. I went with whatever was cheaper. So that's what I am doing here. And you just dump your chocolate cake mix into the container. Once you have it into your bowl, you're going to go ahead and just follow the directions on the back to bake just like one of those 9x13 cakes. Add in the water and the oil and the eggs just like it says to on the back, and mix it well. I went ahead and did that. I did cut my oil amount down. I never put the amount of oil it says to put in. I put about 1 tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of oil in mine. And then I always just add just like 1 tablespoon or 2 of extra water. I dumped in my Oreos that we blended up there in our little mini food processor. And now we're just going to go ahead and mix that in. I did not add any additional liquid into this to mix that extra dry in. I just did it like this. It came out just fine. So you'll go ahead and continue to mix this until it is smooth. It should only take about 2 minutes if you're using an electric hand mixer or a stand mixer. If you're doing it by hand, it might take about 3 to 4. Go ahead and spray down a baking sheet just like you would to make a sheet cake. And go ahead and put your cake mix in there. Follow the baking directions on the back of your box. Whatever it said to preheat and bake it at, go ahead and do that. Make sure that when you're spreading it in your pan, you spread it evenly so that it cooks evenly. I even will take mine and I will shake it on the counter and bounce it around just to kind of tap, tap, tap and make sure that it is even in the pan before I stick it in the oven. As you can see here, shake, 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 back and forth, and then a little tap. After you're done baking it, you'll want to go ahead and check it with a toothpick to make sure it's cooked in the middle. If it's cooked like mine is, now you're going to let it cool for 2 hours. Now once your cake is cooled, you're going to go ahead and break it apart into chunks and then just start crumbling it into your bowl. See, you have your chunks, and now you'll go ahead and crumble that into the bowl. It just makes it easier, so you break it all up. We're going to break this up. This is a quicker and easier way to make a Yule log or a roll cake. There are other ways you can do it to where you cook it really thin, then you roll it and let it cool that way, then unroll it and all that, but that takes forever and I ain't got time for all that. I'm trying to do an easy recipe for y'all, so you just do it like this and it's easy, trust me. You can even break this one and you cannot tell once it's frosted. It is amazing, and you'll see I did it. But go ahead and crumble up that cake mix and get that into a larger mixing bowl. And don't worry, it'll end up going down. We're going to bring it all together here in a second. So after you have all your cake mix in there, the next thing you're going to do is put that little bit, like 2 tablespoons, maybe 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of your frosting in it. And then you're going to put 1/4 to 1/2 cup of milk. I started out with just a couple tablespoons and I kept adding as I mixed. You want to get your hands in there and you want to combine that cake mix with that little bit of frosting. Combine it, combine it, combine it. Just mix that milk and that cake mix up. You're trying to moisten that up. And just keep adding a little milk at a time until it gets to the right dough consistency for us to form this out. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. You're just going to keep mixing it and mixing it and mixing it. Almost like you're doing like a masa, or like you're doing your biscuits. You know, like you're making your biscuit dough or your dumplings, or you're making masa for tamales. Just keep doing that. You're just trying to hydrate that cake mix so it is pliable for rolling out. It needs a little bit more. I'd probably say I ended up using about 1/4 cup of milk. You can use a little more. After I had done it, I wish I would have used just a little bit more. So that's why I said 1/4 to 1/2 cup. But like I said, do like a tablespoon or 2 at a time until you get it to that right dough. See how it's kind of like a dough? But mine was still a little bit too crumbly. I should have used more milk, but I didn't, but that's all right. It's still all worked out. So see, you ain't got to worry about it. Next, you're going to take that frosting that you pulled out. You want to stick that into a mixing bowl, a small mixing bowl. And you want to microwave that for 20 to 30 seconds just to warm it up. It's not going to melt it, but it will warm it up. Now you're going to go ahead and take your Pyrex paper and put that down. And let's go ahead and form our dough out. And go ahead and press it. You're trying to make a rectangle shape here. So you want to try to do your edges and work it. And don't worry about if it's breaking while you're working on it. You can always pull a piece off and fill it in later. It's a wonderful thing about easy recipes like this. You can't really harm it in any way. I was pulling pieces off here and there and filling in little holes where there was chunks missing, and it's not a big deal because it will all come together when it's done. As long as you make sure that your lines are kind of straight there and you're working it out and making sure that it's somewhat even all the way across, you know, the thickness of it. You don't want it to be really thick on one side and really thin on the other. You're trying to keep it more in an equal way. You can use a rolling pin if you want. I just chose not to because I didn't want to deal with the fact that it might stick to it. And I don't have one of those rolling pins that like you put the water in where it's cold to keep that from sticking to it. So I didn't deal with it. I just did it like this with my hands. Took my time. It took me about 7 to 10 minutes to do this because I was really trying to like get those rectangle corners in and make sure that it was going to roll up nice. As you saw there, now I'm taking that chunk. See, I'm filling in spots that look a little thinner or might look like they're breaking apart. And you just do that. That's just how it works. You just fill it in. But we got a nice little rectangle there. Now it's ready for our frosting, which is really cool. This was a pretty easy recipe, and I think you'll enjoy doing it. And you can switch it up and change your flavors of frosting. You can change your flavors of cake. You can change your flavors of the melting chocolate or chocolate chips you put on top. So I went ahead and whipped up that frosting from the Oreos that I melted and added in a little bit of heavy whipping cream. The heavy whipping cream is going to help solidify it and make it more liquidy and make it easy to combine in with our whipped frosting. I just chose whatever white whipped frosting I could find at the store. It doesn't have to be any flavor because it's going to go ahead and just carry on to the flavor of the center of the Oreos. So you go ahead and put that in and mix it up. And once you have that well blended, then you're ready to go ahead and put that on your cake and start icing it. Just make sure it is well blended in. You don't want it to have any kind of lumps or anything. And that's why I blend in steps, just to make sure everything combines equally. And then I'll go ahead and add it in. There is an optional ingredient I did list in the description area. Well, right now you could fold in whipped cream, but like I said in the note underneath that option in the description area, if you do have a chance of certain brands of whipped cream dissolving, and it will not hold up. It will actually be like melted inside the cake. So I chose not to do it, because this was made a couple days ahead of time, and then we served it a couple days later. So I went ahead and just poured this in, and it was super sweet, so I'll let you know that now. This is a very rich dessert. It is very, very sweet. Once you get it spread out pretty evenly, and you don't have to be perfect because you're going to be rolling it up and it's going to be gushing out everywhere anyway. Just make sure you're getting it somewhat to the corners and you've got it pretty spread out. Once you do, then we'll go ahead and start the rolling process, and it's more like a fold and a roll, because like I said, we're doing a very easy version of this recipe. We are trying to make it less difficult. So I used the Pyrex paper to put mine on, and I kind of just gently lifted up one side and almost folded it. As you can see here, I was doing it very light-handedly so I didn't break it too badly, but I would lift and kind of do a small little fold over. Lift and do a fold over, and almost to where I was almost beginning to roll it. And you don't have to worry about it rolling perfectly at this point, because as it gets cold in the refrigerator and sits, it will naturally start to do that. So when you go to frost the outside, it's going to look like a log. So there's mine, and it did crack in several different areas, but don't worry about that. You're not going to be able to tell. What I did with some of the frosting that came out, I smothered it all over the outside, because you're not going to see it anyway, but it kind of just helped to make it almost like a paste to hold it together better. And then I went ahead, and then after I had it rolled all the way, I just took that same Pyrex paper and I rolled it into a log form, like a huge burrito almost. Just rolled it very gently, but making sure I tucked tight so that it was rolled tight. You want to do that. Make sure you're tucking tight all the way through while you're rolling it up to store it into your refrigerator. So once you have that done, set it aside. I'm going to go ahead and use foil, because I feel like it wraps better and holds a very snug shape to things. So I took some heavy duty foil and I stuck it on my counter, and I had to use 2 sheets because my foil is a shorter version, but I went ahead and did that and overlapped it so that it would fit around my Swiss roll. And then what I did is I stuck that roll gently right on top there, and I started wrapping the foil around it. And you want to do this just so none of the frosting or anything comes out, and also so nothing from the freezer or any kind of frostbite or anything that you may have in your freezer gets into it. So I went ahead and wrapped it very gently. It didn't have to be perfect. Don't worry about creases getting in it. You're not going to be able to tell. So I did that. I stuck it on a small cutting board and stuck it in the freezer for an hour, and then into the fridge for another hour. But while that was in there, right before it was ready to come out, I went ahead and I took 12 ounces of my chocolate chips. You can also use melting chocolate, and you can use any flavor or colors you want. You can even dye it if you would like, but it's just 12 ounces. And then I used about 2 teaspoons of coconut oil to melt it. You can use olive oil or avocado oil to do it. Some people even use heavy whipping cream or milk. I did it every 20 seconds in the microwave until it was melted and blended well. Then I went ahead and I took my cake roll out of the fridge and unwrapped the foil off first, very gently. It was almost frozen solid, so it was like really awesome, and it held together well. I also got a small cookie sheet out, and I put a cooling rack over the top of it to set this on, because we're going to be pouring that chocolate over the top of it. So you want to make sure that it is not going to be like collecting at the bottom. Now, if you don't have a cookie rack, you can just set it on a baking sheet and do it. And it's just going to have the look of the Swiss roll when you pull it out, where it's just like kind of a lot of chocolate on the bottom, you know, all dried up and flat. But that's not a big deal. This is your recipe, and do it as you see fit. I had one of these little cookie cooling racks, so I used it. But as you can see, it unwrapped fine. And that is the bottom. We're going to do the bottom first. You just want to do a very light coat of your melted chocolate onto the bottom. And that is just so it's all the way around your log. So I just do like a thin coat. Make sure to get it around and kind of on the sides a little bit as well, just to make sure the bottom has some chocolate on it. It's going to melt and go under a little bit when we're pouring it over on the top, but it's just to make sure the bottom is completely covered, because it probably wouldn't reach the very bottom. So that's why I went ahead and did it like that. And I did go up on the sides a little bit, because it makes it easier when I start doing it from the top, so I don't have to be so critical. But it was nice. And then that way none of the white was showing. So you go ahead and continue just to put a little bit. And like I said, just use a little bit. You don't want to use too much. You're just doing a thin layer on the bottom. You want to save a majority of your chocolate for the top. Now gently grab it and lift it up, and you just want to flip it over. And now you're on the top, so be careful when pouring. Don't pour it all at once, but pour like maybe a third of your chocolate out. And start spreading it around all over your log until you've got it pretty covered. And then when you need a little bit more chocolate, grab some more chocolate. Remember to use your spatula or your paddle, whatever you're using to spread the chocolate on. Remember to put it on the ends as well. You want to cover the ends of the log, those little knobs. Make sure to cover those. And then make sure to turn it around the opposite direction as well, to make sure you're getting the back side. After you do that, you want to make sure that you're covering it so it's completely covered in the chocolate. This was actually a fun recipe to make, and I think it's something you can do with your children because it's not very technical. You can do this version of it, and if it breaks or anything like that, it's very easy to just squish it back together, and you can't even tell once it's done. So it's something that the kids can get in and do, and then they think they've done something amazing, and then you've got just this really cool project that you have with your family. And plus, generally, most of the men really like eating the cake. Well, a lot of women too, but I mean, I don't know. In our family, it was always the guys. The guys love the chocolate. They love the sweets. Let's see, just go ahead and fill it in where you need it. I went ahead and just used all the chocolate, even though I didn't need the whole 12 ounces. I just went ahead and put it on there and let it dry as is, because I still wanted it to have somewhat of a log effect, even though I was making a Swiss roll, because we did use it for the Christmas holiday. And I had never made a Yule log before. And when I saw how complicated it was with the other recipes, I was like, there's no way. There's got to be an easier version. And then I started researching, and I saw someone do this, but it wasn't for a Yule log. It was for a different recipe. And I thought, let's try it with the Yule log. And it worked. So here you go. There is your little Yule log. Now I'm going to leave it just like this. I'm not going to cover it. And I stuck it in the freezer for 45 minutes, and then I pulled it out, and as you can see, it's hard just like a Swiss roll, but it didn't freeze all the way through. It just hardened that chocolate really well. And then I had to gently pry it off, as you can see there. And then I stuck it on this baking sheet. And then I took a toothpick, even though it has some kind of natural lining to it. I went ahead and I took a toothpick and I scraped some lines on it. You can put it on whatever you want for serving. I chose to keep it in this because it's just easier for me to have the smaller pans in my refrigerator. But see, I just went and I kind of like made a little circle for like a little knob in it, and then I started doing little squigglies with the toothpick. And then as I was doing it, I would brush it here and there with my hand just to get the little bits of chocolate off of it. But it ended up turning out pretty well, I thought. You just kind of brush the chocolate and it ends up looking pretty nice. I didn't like go into super detail. I just wanted to have a little bit of a log effect. It was a lot of fun. And that's what you have. You have there, it's a giant Oreo Swiss roll log. But look at it. It's pretty cool, huh? And you just take a knife and cut you off a piece. Once you break through the chocolate, it just goes right through because it's just cake and frosting in the inside. It held up very nicely, and I kept it stored in the refrigerator. Look at that. It was really good. My husband said it was very sweet, and he was very thankful that it was. So there you have it. It's a giant Oreo Swiss roll. Simple and easy, and I hope you did like it. We sure did. It was even very soft and gentle when we cut it. It broke apart very easily. I'll even show you here with a fork. I'll break into it and show you how soft it is when you cut into it. The outside always is just a little bit more firm because of that crustier chocolate shell on the outside, the little bit of the ganache. But see, it's very creamy in the inside. The cake is very soft and moist. It was really, really good. You still have that, it's almost like a cake brownie texture, but it tasted just like an Oreo. It was really good. So thank you for being here on Cooking with Kayla D. All you have to do is just take some saran wrap and cover up your edges to store it into your refrigerator, and it should last about a week. So at the end here, we'll have some beautiful pictures for you.
To demonstrate at the present time his righteousness, that he might be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. Romans chapter 3, verse 26.
So yesterday, January 15th, we had SpaceX take off out of Florida, and we got it here on film in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So here are some photos of the SpaceX coming across our beach here. Thank you for being here on Cooking with Kayla D. We love having you, and we hope that you are a part of our community here. We say stay in that kitchen and keep on cooking. God bless. Until next time. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, you can do so by clicking the icon here on the left, and you can click the icon here on the right for more delicious recipes.